get it. So we can, again, an understanding of when you can apply for these types of benefits and how they can work to your advantage is really important to know. Sometimes it's even important for you to know enough to talk to your potential employers about how being an international student or having an immigration status will not really, make it difficult for them to hire you. Is it really difficult to hire international students? Well, that depends. I mean, at the beginning, it really isn't, because you have a type of work authorization that that you do the work with ISSO to begin your employment. So the employer really doesn't have to do much. Sometimes, though, there would be an immigration attorney involved, and that would bring costs to it. That's something that I'd like to say look at as an investment. You're investing in your future. So getting an attorney for those things that are beyond the scope of the international office is definitely, something to think about. And then, there's always the risk involved when you travel and return to the United States, depending on where you are in your immigration status and in your career or employment authorization application. So those are real issues to think about. The next slide. So the other thing is timing. And, just like all students who get involved in doing the academics for their career, sometimes timing for the job search gets put on hold a little bit. But for international students, it's even more important to think about the time, because it may take you longer than a domestic student to actually get the employment authorization that you need. And this could be a challenge in your career path, because if you get your dream job and they are dying to hire you and you're dying to start, if you don't have that work authorization already in place, that's going to be a delay. So you want to avoid that. Also, with the job search in the US, as we mentioned before, every country and every culture has their specific, job market and the ways that people go about finding a job. So maybe being in the US, if this is your first time looking for a job, this may be a little bit different than what it would take to get a job in your home country. You do come here on a visa that says you're here to get a degree. So it's technically the main focus of you being in the United States is not to get a job, it's to get that degree. So you're always going to have to put that into perspective when you're looking for job opportunities. You are focused on the academic goals. So sometimes, and that depends on you, how socially enmeshed you get into the US culture. How involved or integrated are you in the community of the campus or the community of the town you're in, so that you can actually absorb some of the North American culture into your perspective. Another thing that is a little bit different here is you don't have that established network that you might have at home. Now, as grad students, you probably have more of a network than an undergrad student would have. But again, that's in your home country, your family, friends, people that you've worked with in the past. Here, it's like starting fresh. You really don't have that network. So the more networking you can do, the more connections you can make are always going to make it a little bit easier for the search. And again, goes back to the kind of enmeshing in the culture, just obtaining those soft skills that are critical to the job search in the US. This is so important in your field, especially that sometimes, when you're focusing on the actual academics of your degree program, you don't have time to think much about this, but this is a critical skill to think about.
And one of the things that my office does is it helps you so that you don't have to be the only person thinking about your networks and who you're going to meet and how to connect with them. So we have a variety of programs, and Fatu will talk about it in a couple of minutes, but we are your partners with the networking. We want to help you to develop that network.
Great. So any questions before we move into the nitty-gritty of the employment authorization? Okay, Mariama, did you have your hand raised? Can't hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just want to ask with the relative to timing, related to timing, when do we, when, okay, so we apply, I'm thinking, so towards the final year as a student, you can find, you can look for a job that fits, that gets your interest. And when do you apply?
That's a very good question, and we're going.
After you generate your documentation, or you can apply just in your final year. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're going to go into that next, actually. So why don't we move ahead to the next slide? So as I said before, coming in on a, oops, back one, coming in to the United States either on an F or a J1 visa. Go back one more.
Mm.
One more. Yeah.
Sorry.
That is the primary purpose of your coming to the United States. An F. Oh, do we have any J1s in the audience? Could you raise your hand if you're a J1 so that I know? Okay. So what I'm saying is going to be mostly about F1s, but J1s are I'll mention too. And if you're a J1 sponsored by the World Bank, then that's a totally different story as well. So you have to keep that in mind because your sponsor may have certain requirements for you that you do have to follow. But again, for all students, the main purpose is to study. But you do have options. So for on-campus employment, you don't really need any special authorization from the USCIS or the United States Immigration and Customs Service. You can work on campus up to 20 hours per week and full-time during your vacation periods. And this is true for both F and J1 students. Okay, the way that you get that authorization for F1s, you don't really need any special authorization. For J1s, you do need to get a letter from us or from your sponsor. So that would be the World Bank, if it's the World Bank, or it would be the Institute of International Education, if it's them, or Fulbright, depending on whoever your sponsor is. So on-campus employment is actually a really great way to get a little bit of this cultural soft skill integration that we were talking about before. Is you can have this exposure in an environment where you're comfortable, learn a little bit about how offices operate in the US, and also of course earn a little extra money too, because you can do this on-campus job for money. For off-campus employment, that's a different story. So for any kind of off-campus employment, you will need authorization to work. And that authorization can be given by our office or by the United States USCIS. So the other thing about any type of off-campus authorization is it has to be related to your major field of study. So that's another thing you need to think about. It has to be something that is integral to your academic training. So just remember, we have sessions during the semester, multiple sessions on the intricacies of applying for these types of work authorizations. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here today, but what I would like to do is give you this overview. So if you leave here just knowing, a few things, on-campus employment, easy, no authorization required. Off-campus employment related to your major, authorization required. Those are kind of the basic things. But as I said before, we have multiple presentations. We have a whole section on our website with the detailed step-by-step instructions, how to fill out the forms and all of that, as well as our presentations that we offer on Zoom. They're recorded and they're on the website as well. And then, of course, if you have any doubts after you go through that information, you each have your own individual ISSO advisor, depending on your last name. So you can always contact us for appointments or just email us with your questions. But again, remember, engaging in any type of unauthorized employment is the most common violation of your student immigration status. And you want to avoid any violation at all costs, because that's going to put a barrier up against any future possibilities you would have either visiting or being employed in the United States. Questions on the general idea of employment authorization? I haven't answered your question yet, Mariama, but I'm going to. So your specific question was, can you start applying for jobs, before or after? So mostly, as again, for on-campus employment, you can do that as soon as you're here. For off-campus employment, you're going to want to think about when you complete your degree. You can do a type of, you can go to the next slide. You can do a type of employment authorization that is authorized during the school year if you're in F1 status and in J1 status, and you can do an employment authorization for off-campus work after you graduate. The most common types of off-campus employment authorization for F1 students are going to be curricular practical training. We call it CPT for short. And this can be done during your degree program, but it has to be related to a course. So you'd actually be enrolled in some kind of course, and the training would allow you to work for a company related to your degree, earn a salary, but you'd be getting credit for it, and you'd have to work with a faculty advisor or a professor to decide what your academic deliverable is going to be for that particular course. So that's CPT, which can be used during your degree for F1s. For after you complete your degree, the most common thing is optional practical training. Again, this is F1s, and it can be used during or your degree program or after your degree program. Most commonly used after, because you can use curricular during and save up the OPT for after. And if you're going to be completing your degree, for those of you that told us in the chat that you're, towards the end of your degree, you should be applying for your OPT 90 days before you complete your degree. That's the earliest you can do that. Okay, you have to be in valid F1 status. And in most cases, eligibility for either CPT or OPT begins after you've been in status for 1 full year as a student. So that again goes back to your question. You have to be in status for a full year before you're eligible. And that makes sense if you think about the theory of it, because you're here to study, you need to get your academics under control, figure out what your, time, your free time is. And then if you have the time to do something that's more training or employment related, you can do that. Again, a reminder, I can't say it enough. Be careful of that unauthorized employment. And, when we talk about unauthorized employment, you do have to be careful, because what do we even say employment is? Employment can be dog walking, babysitting, all these things that you think about that, oh yeah, sure, I can just do that to earn a little extra money. Not as an international student, unfortunately. So you need to be very careful with any type of services that are offered from yourself with some kind of compensation. Now, the J1 students, since we have a couple in our audience, I'll just say that's a little bit different. So for F1s, it's the curricular practical training and the optional. For J1s, it's called academic training. And again, similar to the F, it has to be related to your major field of study. You have to be in valid status, and you must get authorization from your program sponsor. So for World Bank scholars, it's the World Bank. For international students that are sponsored by Brandeis, it's the Brandeis International Student and Scholar Office. And once you get that letter and you submit a request for academic training in the ISSO portal, then we can grant you that work authorization, which is a little different than the Fs, because for Fs, it actually has to be authorized by the USCIS, whereas the Js, you're authorized by your program sponsor. Okay, so actually, before we go to the flow chart, now, like I said, I didn't go into a ton of detail about all of this because we have a lot of detail on our website and in our other presentations, which I highly recommend you attend. But any general questions about the timeline? Did I answer your question, Mariama? And are there other questions about the general idea of working in the United States?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that answered your question? Okay. Anything else? Anyone else?
Yeah, so I just have one clarification. So this as a J1 sponsored by World Bank, and if I want to have to do academic training, I have the first thing I need to do is to request a letter, training letter from World Bank. Is that what you're saying?
I would request that you speak with Ravi and first,
Okay.
and ask him what the procedure is. But yeah, the idea would be that you get permission from the World Bank.
Okay, thank you. I will
Yeah,
speak to Professor Ravi.
yeah, that would be great. Great. Anything else? Anyone else? Now's your chance. Okay, so we'll move on. So once you get through all of this stuff with the practical training and the academic training, you may be thinking long-term that you would like to stay in the US for a while. So a typical pathway to what we call permanent residency in the US is illustrated in this flow chart. So if you're an F1 or J1 status, you're probably going to get your optional practical training, which it allows 12 months per degree level. So if you're in a master's degree now, you can get 12 months of optional practical training if you're F. Then if you go for a PhD, you get another 12 months. And if you are doing a STEM degree, you can get an additional 24 months. So that's a total of 3 years per degree, except the STEM extension is only once. Not, you can't do it after every degree. And the J1 academic training is usually limited to the 18 months or the length of your academic program. There is some extension opportunities for academic training for STEM degree holders as well. Once you've used all of that employment authorization or those options, many students go for this whole alphabet soup of visa options that are underneath there. And the main one is the H-1B. That's the most popular one. And that is a maximum of 6 years. With the H-1B, you need to have a company that sponsors you. Okay, this is where all that sponsor, do you need to be sponsored and all that. While you're on optional practical training or curricular practical training, there's no such thing as sponsorship, so you don't have to worry about that. But once you get into something beyond that, you're having a company sponsor you for your H-1B status. The TN is a visa that's for Mexicans and Canadians. It's a special, used to be about the NAFTA treaty, but it changed its name now. But it is a special opportunity for Canadians and Mexicans. The E1s and the L1s and the E3s are just a bunch of other options that I don't have any expertise in, but we do bring an immigration attorney in to talk about that at another time during the semester. So keep your eye out for that session. I see we have a hand raised here, so I don't want to mispronounce your name, but
Fatumata, me?
yes, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is, if someone has been in the US on another type of visa, would that in any way impact their work accusation in the US?
Yes, that's a good question. Yes, it does, definitely, but it depends on what you mean. So you have a specific case that you're thinking of?
Yeah, say a J1 visa or another type of B visitors visas in the US.
So the J1 visa would definitely have an issue because the J1 visa sometimes has what's called a 2-year home residency requirement with it. Because again, the idea behind the J is that you're going to come to the United States, gain some very practical skills and training, and you're going to return to your home country to assist in the development and the economy of your country. So that requirement prevents you from changing to a permanent status in the United States because the idea is that you're returning home. So if you were previously on a J, you might have figured out a way to change to an F, but the 2-year home residency requirement is still there for you. So that would prevent you from getting permanent residency. And the other thing is if you've used up, if you've used up your 12 months of optional practical training on one master's degree, but you decide, hey, I want to go for another master's degree, you can't get another 12 months because it's the same degree level. If you went and got a PhD, you could get another 12 months too. So it depends. But anyway, once you're on any of these types of alphabet soup visas, then you're going to be on the pathway to permanent residency, which is a whole long involved procedure, which can take years for some people. Again, I recommend that you come to our immigration attorney visit to learn more about that. Questions? I just gave you a lot of information, so if you have questions, please do ask. Okay,
All right.
what's next?
There.
I'll turn it over to Fatu for this, I guess.
Well,
Yes.
Karen, did you want to talk about the
Oh, I can
ISO
talk about
events?
mine. Sure, of course. So like I said, we have our OPT information sessions. We're going to have them on the dates that are there. They're all on Zoom on our website. You can get the link to go to those. There's one on STEM as well. I really recommend that you do that. And then both of those sessions are recorded on our website too, if you can't get to those Zoom presentations.
Fatu?
All right. Yeah. So on behalf of the Hella Career Development Office, I know we have the newsletter going out every Tuesday. So you will be seeing all the events we are hosting. But also I wanted to invite you all to some of our outstanding events. Especially in October, we have an info session with the report for the fellowship. We also have a couple of career conversations that are coming up. I know we just talked about, job opportunities for international students, but these are important sessions to attend because it allows for networking. It allows for us to understand the opportunities that are out there and the career trajectories that other people have used to be where they are. So please, let's take great use of these opportunities. And then we have the alumni and student networking event, which is coming up on October 27. It's for students and alumni. So you're all welcome. And as far as Hella is concerned, we're also looking at how to support students to get to the venue. So just be on the lookout. We'll send you more information for that. And we're hoping to see everybody there.
Wonderful. So here's some resources. So many of them have been mentioned. So this will give you all of those links so you don't have to go and do your own research. So they're here for you. And as has been mentioned a number of times, there are lots of opportunities for you to learn and understand this stuff if this first pass at it didn't stick, right? So please take full advantage of all of these resources. Okay. And then this is how you contact our offices. So I'll leave this up and invite any other questions or other topics you had hoped that we would discuss.
Yeah, I'm also happy to answer more specific questions about employment authorization if you have them.
There's a question on the chat from Mariam.
Okay.
And will the presentation slide be shared? That is the question.
Yes. Yes, it will. So all of our programming, which we have to ask if it's okay to record, but everything that is recorded will go onto our YouTube channel. So you can look at it at any time. And this session is one of those.
Yeah. Thank you. And we have another question. It says, I was under the impression that H-1B is quite limited and distributed through a lottery. Is that true?
Yes, it is true. It's a lottery system. Again, I do not have expertise in H-1B. The immigration attorney does. So I really, can't answer that much about it, but it's definitely something that is not guaranteed. There are 60,000 H-1Bs available to international people, and it's given through a lottery system. So, yeah.
All right.
And I'll take the question, what about career fairs? So, our office will not be having a career fair this year. However, we will have multiple sessions. I would say probably 2 or 3 a month, which are with either employers or with alumni who are connected to employers. So, the thing about a career fair is it's sort of a one-shot deal. And all of the employers are in one place and you're there and everybody's kind of moving around and doing stuff. Now, there are career fairs that are offered at Brandeis. So I know that there are some career fairs at the business school, there are some career fairs at Hyatt, but our office focuses more on a personalized approach so that you are in sessions with more like, I don't know, 15, 20 people as opposed to hundreds. So, and we are always here to help you to think about what specifically you're interested in doing, and how you want to go about your strategies for doing that. So we are very hands-on, individually focused shop.
The last thing I guess I would add to this whole presentation too, and again, it's looking at the big picture. I said a couple of times that you're here on visas to study and to obtain your degree, but there are options for employment. And if that's what you're seeking, employment in the United States, I always recommend to students that, you have a few different plans, that you don't get your heart set on any one particular industry, one particular option, because it may not work out that you win the H-1B lottery, this year, but that doesn't mean you can't go back to your home country for a while and then come back on a different type of visa, an H or an L, or as I said, there are many different types of visas. It doesn't mean that you won't come back for another degree sometime. It doesn't mean that you won't go to a different country to study. So I always say have a couple of different plans. Not only the idea of staying in the United States to work, but if you have the idea that that's what you want to do, there are definitely possibilities and ways that you can do that. And that's what we're here to help you with too. So we're here to help you work within the structure of the immigration system to obtain your career and academic goals. No more, you have to have more questions.
So assuming that there are more questions, we will be available, so at these different locations, in person, Zoom advising, one-on-one. So you can schedule with me specifically, and I'm really happy to work with you. And, my goal is not to get you a job in the United States. My goal is to help you to use the things that you're learning in your programs and the things that you come with, in order to enter into the career path, or start the career journey that you want to start. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was a great session, great to meet folks, and I hope that you take full advantage of the opportunities. This session will be posted again on our YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Thank
you all.
you.
It's great seeing you.
Yep, take good care.
All right, bye.